Well, Richard, we recently found out about you from a few of your articles involving the Mitch Rompola buck.
Hmm.
And in one of those articles, it stated that you have been covering this controversy basically since the beginning, since day one. How did you get wrapped up into one of the most controversial stories still to this day?
Well, I knew Mitch since the early 1980s, long before he killed that buck in 1998. And you referred to it as a controversial deer. And it's
Hmm.
unfortunate that that label is put on that deer because it shouldn't be controversial at all. Mitch did more to document the authenticity of that deer than most people who have entries in Boone and Crockett. He shot a video uh, from the tree stand he killed the deer from, following the blood trail to the recovery of that deer, something very few hunters do. He had a game warden inspect the deer, the whole deer, before he skinned and butchered it. Uh, for most deer, that would be enough.
Hmm.
Um, Too many rumors and false information started circulating on the internet that were not based on facts at all. And that got out of hand. And those rumors and myths and false information stole something precious from all deer hunters in Michigan and all deer hunters in North America. That deer is as real as they get. In Mitch, what I know of Mitch and his history, and from what I've written about his hunting, um, there's no doubt in my mind it's a real deer. It's
Hmm.
unfortunate there's so much false information circulating about it.
So were you a friend of Mitch's? Were you guys or did you know of him, an
Well,
acquaintance? What was the relationship before 98?
the state record keeping organization called Commemorative Bucks of Michigan started in the early 1980s. I was interested in big bucks and deer hunting at the time. When they formed, I wrote about the organization's beginning. I edited and wrote the first record books, first four record books published for the organization. Mitch was records chairman. I also edited a quarterly magazine uh, put together by the organization called Buck Facts. And I dealt with Mitch. He was a scoring chairman. He provided some information about deer for Buck Facts, and he also provided some letters and other stuff in Buck Facts. And we both uh, were involved in deer hunting. We both were speakers at deer hunting shows, um, on panels of expert deer hunters, where hunters would ask questions. And so I spent a lot of time with Mitch.
I know there's not very many of those videos circulating the internet right now of like Mitch actually out in the woods and like talking about hunting. But of those few that are on YouTube and stuff, you can definitely tell that he knows a thing or two about whitetail, definitely. And in my perspective, he was almost seemed like he was ahead of the game on certain types of tips and tactics that he would point out. And so
Yes.
there's no doubt he's a very impressive hunter. But how does somebody go to hold, I guess, just blatantly that many records from one singular individual? Because I know in his younger years he had like the Missouri state record, and then I think he ended up topping that one, and then all of a sudden come to like 1985 he ended up holding the record for the commemorative bucks of Michigan for a
The
certain time
state
period.
record typical bow kill, correct. He
Yes, sir.
got that in 1985 on November 8th, which happened to be his 37th birthday. He killed that
Okay,
buck.
that's a
It,
good birthday present.
yeah, exactly. It had a net score of 181 and 7/8. Impressive rack. It was a 12-point typical, the same number of points as the one he killed in 98, but it was only 4.5 years old. I want to say only. A lot of bucks most bucks are younger than that when they're killed.
Mhm.
But it was 4.5-year-old buck, had an impressive rack, was a state record typical bow kill for many years. Prior to getting that buck, he killed a number of others in the 150s and 160s with bow and arrow.
It shows the thing that is so interesting to me about that is, you think about Michigan, you think about the UP, you think about just kind of I know there's big deer now, especially in southern Michigan, more of the farmland and stuff, but someone in a state that isn't typically held in high regard for really big deer and it has a massive amount of hunters, a guy consistently that far back then just killing buck after buck after buck, especially record with bucks, that pings a light bulb in my head. It seems like a big outlier in a place that, isn't thought of in that way.
He is, but how he approaches deer hunting is why. He scouts year round. How many people do you know do that? Not too many.
Very few. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. I spend year round photographing and studying deer and walking with them to see what they do year round. And Mitch did the same thing. Only he was doing it in an area where he could hunt them. Where I'm walking with whitetails, I can't hunt them, but I can take videos and photographs. Seeing behavior very few other people see. He mapped out 6 square miles of his area. He lives near a large swamp that's very wet and thick that very few other people hunted. He thoroughly mapped 6 square miles, knowing where doe family groups spent most of their time. He knew where adult bucks spent their time. He spent a lot of time in the winter snow tracking deer after hunting season was over, following backwards, backtracking them to where they'd been, as well as following them forward to see where they were going. He just spent enormous amount of time studying deer and preparing for the upcoming season.
Did we lose
he
you?
wrote something that I've quoted in one of the books I've written about his big bucks, that as soon as the season's over, he starts planning for the next year's hunt and spends far more time preparing for the following season than most hunters will spend hunting during that season. He's just a fanatic deer hunter. And by spending as much time scouting and having habitat that few other hunters penetrate, and having where bucks can reach older age classes. The buck he killed in 1998 was 7.5 years old. Most bucks don't reach that age. That's why it had such a large set of antlers. Obviously, it had excellent genetics for antler development. The buck he killed in 1985 that was 4.5 years old, if it lived another 3 years, it might have had similar antlers to the buck in 98.
You hear of those guys, like, or you see movies about it. Like I immediately started thinking about Tarzan, like a guy who assimilates into a group of gorillas and comes out like acting like. It seems like Mitch had like an obsession with whitetail. He's like almost becoming a deer by like spending so much time in the woods, understanding the behavior, down to the point where he knows individual doe family groups, like where they are.
Exactly.
I'm imagining it when you were saying it, like painting a picture in my head of a square map, like of someone who has their own farm and they start to map out food plots and stuff, but he's mapping that out with like deer, like these deer here, these travel corridors here. It's like, and to do that, all of that without trail cameras, it's like, that takes an obsession.
Well, and that's the advantage of having snow in the winter, to be able to track those deer both forward and backward, to see how they use the terrain, where they spend their time, where they bed. He located bedding areas, feeding areas, all the types of areas that they utilize most often.